Welcome to this morning session, Navigating ESG Demands, a lenders perspective. My name is Grzegorz Galusek, and I will moderate this session. It is actually a SIPTA session. SIPTA stands for Social Inclusion Finance Technical Assistance Program. It's a support program for microfinance institutions and social finance providers in the EU. It is implemented by a number of institutions, including the MFC that I am part of, but also the Frankfurt School of Management, also the European Microfinance Network, and it provides numerous free of charge, what's most important, opportunities for providers of microfinance and social finance providers to develop their capacity in various areas of the operations. So thank you, SIPTA, for supporting this impact series of webinars. But let's move on to our topic. As we all know, we've entered this new era of ESG standards. They basically take center stage globally, and we're seeing new frameworks, expectations, new demands from stakeholders. So I think the question these days isn't really whether to embrace ESG, but it's more how to adapt and thrive in this new reality. That's on one hand. On the other hand, we in microfinance have been living and basically breathing these principles for decades through frameworks such as SPM. So there's also this question how these two concepts, two frameworks relate to each other. Do new standards complement SPM? Do they potentially elevate them or maybe replace them? So we'll try to answer these questions in today's webinar. So let me now introduce our distinguished panelists representing leading impact investors. And so a very warm welcome to Karina Navarro from Impulse. Karina is ESG and sustainability expert and data intelligence manager. We also have today with us Jon Saler. Jon is social and environmental performance manager at CD. CD stands for Solidarité Internationale pour le Développement et l'Investissement, which I think we can translate as International Solidarity for Development and Investment. We also have today with us Prajakta Saraf. Prajakta comes from Responsibility Investments and ESG officer there. And also a warm welcome to Edward Ster. Edward is head of risk and impact and compliance at Fondation Grameen Crédit Agricole. So very warm welcome to all of you. And I would like to warm us up by basically asking you a question. How would you briefly describe the intersection of ESG principles and microfinance? So in other words, what do we mean by ESG standards when we apply them to microfinance? And maybe before any of you would like to answer this question, I can also give a brief overview of the session. So we have 1 hour. We will present each member's perspective on ESG, and so basically this means that they will tell us what are the main criteria they use and how they are, what's specific about their approach to ESG standards for microfinance institutions, and then we'll have further discussion. So the idea is that we do not take that much time on presenting the lenses criteria, but focus then on the discussion. And we encourage all of you to ask questions. You can do that by posting your question in the chat box. So my question is, how can we briefly describe the intersection of ESG principles and microfinance? So in other words, what do we mean by ESG standards when we apply them to microfinance? Just to warm up, just a quick type of responses, impressions on that.
Yes, maybe very briefly, it's a subject that is arising everywhere in the world, following the debates that are happening in Europe, in the US, in terms of reinforcing transparency and regulation when it comes to financial products that claim to have ESG strategies, impact strategies, and in Europe we have this SFDR regulation that comes in with Article 6, Article 8, and Article 9 financial products. And all of them have to include some kind of ESG into it. For Article 9 products, so the ones who are the most, let's say, advanced when it comes to pursuing social and environmental impacts, positive impacts, and reducing negative impacts. There's this concept of impact that comes in one way or another. It bridges a gap that had been existing so far between the microfinance industry and the global financial market for most players. And to that extent, there is kind of a convergence of concepts that you described between ESG and social and environmental performance management. And what is getting what is actually happening, and that's new wording are starting to appear. And as you said, the question is whether it's more than just evolving the terminology that we're using, whether we have to go further than that or not, whether we have to abandon social and environmental performance management. This is, I think, a question that is in the mind of many ESG and impact managers in different, for different investing organizations or in microfinance institutions. And it's all the more complicated as ESG is changing all the time now. I believe that ESG has, let's say, three main components: disclosure in terms of especially negative impacts, risk management. It's a risk management framework for the global financial market, which means that, like global institutional investor are more interested into the E and the S and the G when they can actually generate additional risk on the investment that they made in the company. So it's about protecting the investment that is being done from the E, the S, and the G, right? So it's not about impact, it's about risk. But then you have also everything related, of course, to negative impact mitigation. So I think ESG covers those three aspects, which and they include both the inner parts of an organization as well as the outer aspect of the organization. So various stakeholders, HR, customers, environment, and others. And to that extent, it's true that it's more standard and it's supposed to be useful for any type of organization, but it's very close to what actually social and environmental performance management is covering, with a big difference, of course, that social and environmental performance management is something that was built by the microfinance industry. It's a terminology that is only understood by the microfinance industry, and that's one of its limitations. But where it's much more powerful, that it's very much adapted to microfinance institutions, which are often socially minded and driven organizations. So for microfinance organization, the S is always extremely strategic in the way they are organized and the type of project that they promote and how they promote them, which makes a big difference with ESG, which is so much more like mainstreamed, so less adapted. So yeah, there's this issue of finding the right balance but we probably can discuss that
yeah,
a bit more later.
We'll go back to that, and it seems like a rather complicated relationship. You mentioned impact, a certain impact gap between microfinance and the world of finance that the ESG is trying to cover. I think these are important aspects of ESG standards. Any other perspectives on that, Projecta, Karina? Just quick comments if you would like to make.
I think that John pointed out very important aspects regarding the transparency and protection. I think that it's important indeed to think that the ESG help in the identification of important risk and also opportunities. So, and our aspect that normally are not considered is considered more ESG, like reporting and seeking some boxes. But really, there is an important element regarding with the protection, the identification of risks, and also opportunities for the microfinance institution.
Super, thanks. Very good. So, before we move to
okay, Gregor, Edward speaking.
Yes, Edward, please go ahead. Yes.
Yes, I won't put my camera because my phone does not want to turn the camera to me.
Okay.
So if I may, I will just speak.
Yeah.
On the, I think this first question is really on the ESG definition and what are ESG risks for investors, and I would like to add something. I think we should make a clear distinction between what we call outside-in risks and inside-out risks. John mentioned it a bit, but when an investor is speaking about ESG risk, we are speaking both about the risk that the world can have on the investment and can have on the value of the investment, and also the risk that the investment, the investee, can generate on its stakeholders. And it's not the same thing at all, and I think we should keep that in mind, even though it's linked. So for the outside-in risks, so the risk that there is an impact on the investment due to an external factor, of course, as investor, we will look at, for example, whether the investee is at risk of big floods, for example, or is at risk of corruption, for example, or is at risk due to saturated credit markets. So with these three examples, we cover E, S, and G. And so we will have to act on these risks as an investor to protect the value of our investment and also to protect our partners to the extent we can work on this together. On the other side, the inside-out risks are the risks generated by our investee, which can be, for example, in microfinance over-indebtedness, or it can be also frauds, which can be related to governance risks, or also damage to the environment.
Yeah.
Although financial inclusion has less impact on the environment, that it is vulnerable to climate risks. And so these are a different nature of risk, but of course, if these risks are particularly important, they can generate a liability on the investment, and then it creates also a cost for the investor in the form of a liability or a reputation risk. I think it's important to have these two kinds of ESG risk in mind.
So very important point that ESG actually is critical for investors because it can somehow accommodate this resilience to outside risks and the risks that can be caused by the institutions. So an important aspect of ESG. Before each of the speakers present the institutional approach, we have a quick poll to make. Of course, the seminar is meant for practitioners so that they understand better the philosophy behind ESGs, but also the practical implementation aspect. So we would like to ask you, and please take a second to think about the answer. What is the biggest challenge your organization faces in implementing ESG practices? And you can mark one answer. So the potential answers are lack of resources or expertise, data limitations. The third one is resistance from internal stakeholders, navigating the evolving landscape of ESG regulations, meeting the diverse ESG requirements of different investors, and then confusion about the different impact frameworks. So I wonder, so we have all types of responses, with 3 of them in the lead: lack of resources or expertise. That's an important point also from the, maybe from the CITA perspective. Data limitations, the difficulty in collecting and analyzing data, and then navigating the evolving landscape of ESG regulation. So maybe, so let's keep those answers in our minds when we also have a discussion. But before we have a discussion, I would like to ask Karina to say a few words about Impulse approach to ESG standards. And I know Karina has some presentations.
Some words about Impulse. Is a Brussels-based investment manager with more than 20 years of experience in microfinance and social investment. We are really highly committed to create a positive social and environmental impact. We promoted sustainable investment by applying ESG approach that integrates social, environmental, and governance dimensions, criteria, and KPIs. We manage and advise 5 funds currently. 100% of them are Article 9 in relation of the SFDR. We started to structure our ESG impact management and measure system in 2018. As you said, Segors and John, the social and environmental performance management is really a topic present in microfinance for a long time ago already. And but in 2018, we started to structure a rigorous and robust ESG impact and management measurement system, and we align it with international frameworks, mainly with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but also with the universal standard of social. Let me check here what is social performance. Tax 4, also the Global Investment Network, the SMART campaign, and the SMART campaign more on the client protection principle, and the DUEC challenge, and to analyze in depth the contribution toward the women's empowerment. On the environmental dimension, we integrate in our framework the Green Index 3.0 and 2.0 in that moment, the standards, but we also develop in-house innovative climate change perception framework in which we analyze the climate risk perceived by the clients, as also Eduardo highlight the internal and external risk. And on the governance, our framework is aligned with the European Code of Conduct. We have been evolving with the system. The ESG is a buzzword indeed, and there are different regulations and standards and directives, but we are trying to evolve in the last year. So now we have a very robust ESG performance results for our clients located in Europe and North of Africa and Middle East. And at the same time, we have trying to evolving with the technology advancement. So in 2023, thanks to a partnership that we make with the Data Sustainable Solution Institution, we brought our ESG impact management and measuring system to another level. Now it's 100% digital. So our clients know that they can report the ESG data on this digital platform, and this reduce the time consuming that was before in the data collection and data treatment. And we are focused more now in the data intelligence and business intelligence, analyzing these results and trends, and putting all this information in our different ESG impact and sustainability reports to try to show indeed our impact in the through our investments. So also it's important to highlight that our ESG framework is integrated in the investment process in all cycle life, from the pre-investment assessment. So the potential new client report the ESG data. We systematically carry out ESG due diligence and also ESG scoring, and a final ESG note that goes to the investment committee. So the investment committee really has these two big elements and analysis on the financial and non-financial criteria. And based on this analysis, we propose and we discuss with this potential client and the new client some ESG covenants in the contracts. We monitor these covenants and these ESG KPIs and goals, and also we require to our clients to report annually ESG data. And with this information, we produce the annual impact report. So we collect, analyze, and monitor quantitative and qualitative ESG data. We integrate sustainable risk into investment process. We integrated it in all the cycle of investment, and we publish annual reports. So all this align with the SFTR regulation. And this is a detailed representation of our analysis. This is the results on the 2023 impact report. So these are the contribution according with the materiality analysis that we make to the different SDGs. So we here in the analysis not only try to show like the gross quantitative data, but also we try to go into detail and the typology of the impact, the ESG's contribution. And besides, we compare this data with the previous year, with the type of institution, and also with regions to identify the trends, the risks and opportunities on the ESG. Also on the social dimension, we analyze the women empowerment, and this is important to highlight here that we not only consider the international standard and we are aligned with them, for example, in this case, in the women empowerment with the 2X challenge, but we also compare our results with the threshold that has this international initiative. For example, in this case, in the 2X challenge, we analyze the women in the workforce, the financial services to women, the women entrepreneurship, and the women leadership. We want, besides to say how many women are in the staff or as loan officer, what is the position of these women in the managerial position in the board of directors, for example. In the environmental dimension, aligned with the green index, so we analyze 4 standards, not only the environmental goals and targets, but also they provide a strategic direction for the institution if there is a specific person in charge of the environmental issues, if this person is training to analyze the different environmental risk. That is really a big room of opportunity and improvement there. And also the external and internal environmental risks and the green financial and non-financial products. Besides, we integrate the standard 5, so we request to our clients their perception about the climate risk. So this has been very interesting because we started to work with this in 2018, and in that moment, there were not a lot of perception about this, or the perception about the climate change was not present. And now, after year after year, the clients are more aware about the effect of climate change, the negative effects, the effect on their clients' activities, but also the estimated impact on the default rate because of the climate change effects. And finally, on the governance, we analyze 5 criteria with different KPIs, but mainly the business planning, the board effectiveness and independence, the management, human resources, and operational manuals, and external accountability. So, for example, in detail, we analyze if the client has a human resources policy, if this is in place, if this is outdated, if the investees assess the employee satisfaction, for example, if there are included in the policies no harassment aspects, and also gender equality and other detailed aspect like a gender pay gap. So this is in general. Thank you. This is also in our impact 2023 impact report. So if you have any question, please don't hesitate to contact me after this panel by email or LinkedIn. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Karina. That looks like a very complex and comprehensive at the same time system. And at the same time, I'm trying to follow the chat. Edward got praised for his words, and especially the relationship between SPM and ESG.
So CD is an investor that has been involved into the microfinance industry for more than 40 years. We're what we call solidarity. We do solidarity finance. It's not obvious to translate. It's very French as a terminology, but our capacity to invest relies a lot on actually private resources coming from individuals or through employee schemes mechanism that we have in France, which allow us to have quite capacity to do a lot of things actually. So we have 124 partners in 33 countries. We are mission-driven investors. We have, let's say, 4 different aspects in our mission, and you see that, of course, it will cross with the ESG subjects. First, what we try to maximize additionality of CD. This is really at the heart of our investment strategy. So we invest mostly in rural microfinance institutions with strong agriculture portfolio, and in agroecological, cooperatives and agriculture entities. With debt and equity and plenty of other types of mechanisms that we can use. In terms of impact that we want to generate, we have 3 pillars: promote economic equality, which is basically about contributing to strengthening our partners and develop local economy, and covering SDG 8, in terms of quality jobs, and SDG 10 when it comes to reducing inequalities between countries and inside countries. A second pillar focuses more on end beneficiaries. We try to reach vulnerable people, especially in rural areas. We take very good care of, for matters related to gender inequalities, and we encourage our partners to diversify, the products meeting the needs of the clients. In terms of SDG, as Karina started to mention them, we focus on SDG 1, so no poverty; 2, zero hunger; 5, gender equality; and 7, access to affordable and clean energy as a development tool. And when it comes to climate change, which is new for us, we try to address it through more responsible practices and the offer of newer types of loans adapted to climate challenges. We support agroforestry, agroecology as agriculture practices, and almost 100% of our agriculture entities partner are certified either organic, either fair trade, which implies that they have good practices in terms of managing the environment. In terms of results, and this is where also you see the link, how we translate that and what matters to us when it comes to ESG. We are very much invested into low human development index countries, in risky countries, and in countries where the climate change is already something that is very, let's say, material for the organizations. We are very much focused onto sub-Saharan Africa now, even though we have portfolio all over the world, in South America, for instance. But you can see that 62% of our portfolio, in terms of a number of partners, is invested into sub-Saharan Africa, and we strive to be first international investor for most of our investees. We do that. So CD is an investment society, right? So we have capacity to invest in a capital, but we are also owner of an investment society in Uganda that does debt financing in East Africa. We're also an advisor to a 25 million debt fund, which is called FIFISOL 2, that is managed and promoted by Impulse, dedicated to sub-Saharan Africa. And thanks to all those tools, we're able actually to do that. We have strong capacity to provide technical assistance facilities on all subjects, and we tend to be extremely blended as an organization. So we have access to plenty of type of blending to tools, allowing us to meet with our social objectives. As you can see, our equity portfolio, so it's roughly 55% of our investment are in equity for CD and the debt fund. So CD is 55%, but when you include the debt fund, it goes down to 35% of our all investment that are in equity. We're invested, for instance, in Kosovo and Moldavia. In Kosovo, we're invested in Kareka. We have been invested since 2003. In Moldavia, we're invested into Microfinance since 2005, and both investments are in equity. We try to adapt our loan. Obviously, you can see that our loans are much smaller than our benchmark, meaning that we try to target smaller organizations, which obviously are more fragile and have less ESG capacities than many others. So we adapt also our requirements to the capacity of our partners, and we take them on the journey to improve their practices on the long term. And in terms of results, well, this is what we get at the end of the day. So you can see all those figures. So CD has those social objectives, right? That you can see translated. In terms of tools that we have, we use a Linus at due diligence level that we complete with a few indicators in which are specific, to allow us to assess how we progress into achieving our social objectives. And to do that, so you can see some of the results here. We also have what we call the mission scoring system. And when we do due diligence, we kind of generate a score, a kind of mission score for each of investees or future investees, which is put in the balance with the kind of the risk scoring that we have. And we try to see, whether we take a greater risk, where obviously we expect that it's worthwhile in terms of potential impacts of our partners when it comes to positive impacts, both social and economical. And then we use this tool as well to manage our portfolio when it comes also to be able to assess or in a very, let's say, objective way whether a partner is still aligned with our social mission. As we said, we are long-term investors, so it happens, of course, that we may have divergence of views and strategy choices, and this kind of scoring also helps us to decide when we want to disinvest from an organization. I'm very happy to answer any questions on this.
Okay, super. So meanwhile, there's a question to Karina. Maybe we can answer them before we move to our next speakers. And the question is, Karina, when you say perception of clients on climate risks, is it at the level of investees or end clients? Can you maybe answer this question?
Yeah, I already answered by the chat.
Okay.
And
Okay.
still, thank you. But it's mainly at the level of investees.
Okay.
It's a perception of the investees on these effects.
Okay, good, very good. So let's move to the next speaker. Prajakta, please go ahead and present the responsibility ESG framework and its main criteria.
Thank you, Grzegorz. Thank you for having me here. And I would also like to thank Microfinance Center for organizing this event and inviting all of us here. Thank you, everyone. To start with, let me quickly give you an introduction to responsibility. Responsibility is an impact asset manager based in Switzerland. We invest primarily in private debt and private equity investments in emerging markets, primarily around 3 investment themes, that is financial inclusion, climate finance, and sustainable agriculture. The company manages assets of about $5.1 billion USD invested across more than 300 portfolio companies. Being an impact investment firm, all of our products are Article 9 funds, and hence ESG and impact analysis are the bedrock of our investment decision process. Today, I'm here to share about the ESG analysis framework that we use for our financial inclusion investments. So before we begin, I just wanted to quickly touch upon the difference between impact and ESG. At Responsibility, we evaluate each investment based on two separate criteria, that is the positive outcomes and the negative outcomes. To elaborate, impact assessment helps to identify the positive outcomes from any investment, such as the rise in number of micro entrepreneurs or rural borrowers or women borrowers as the final impact of our investment, or maybe improved workforce diversity at microfinance institutions. This enables us to assess whether the investment is aligned with the sustainable objective of the fund, which is to promote financial inclusion. On the other hand, ESG analysis helps us identify the environmental and social risks from the investee's business operations or from the underlying portfolio. It helps us ensure that we do no significant harm through the investments, which is one of the requirements of the SFDR regulations as well. The ESG risk can be further divided into two categories using the lens of double materiality, as mentioned by Edward earlier. So you have the inside-out risks or the outside-in risks, where the inside-out is more about the impact of financial institution or its end borrowers on the ESG factors, and outside-in is about the impact of external factors on the financial institutions. Since Edward has already discussed this very beautifully, I'm not going to go into the details of these risks. So let me then jump into how we do ESG assessment at Responsibility. So at Responsibility, the consideration of environmental, social, and governance factors is firmly integrated in our investment process, as I mentioned earlier. We start with a screening process, which has a reputational check and a check against the exclusion list. An exclusion list is basically a list of activities or businesses which may have significantly negative impact on environment or society. We are primarily using the IFC exclusion list, and we also expect MFIs to use a similar screening mechanism to identify potentially harmful activities at the outset of the investment process. We then categorize the ENS risk for the potential investee to determine the level of due diligence that is required, where higher risk categories demand a more in-depth examination of the FI's operations. So the risk categorization for financial institutions is primarily based on the composition of FIs, where any FI having higher exposure to high-risk activities such as mining or quarrying or large infrastructure projects, etc., would be categorized as medium or high. During the due diligence process, we assess compliance with the IFC performance standard. That is the main framework we use for our ESG assessments. So in case of financial institutions, it would translate to assessing whether the labor conditions or the labor practices of the FI are in compliance with the local regulations or with the IFC performance standard, or the management of ENS risks by the financial institution of its borrowers, or fair treatment of clients, because client protection is also another important risk for microfinance institutions. If we identify any areas of non-compliance or deviations from our requirements during the due diligence process, we establish an environmental and social action plan. So this is an action plan with deliverables and clearly defined timelines, basically developed to mitigate any gaps we observe in the ESG performance of the microfinance institutions. This action plan is also included in the loan agreement, and hence it is binding for the investee. Post-disbursement, we also engage with the MFIs on an annual basis for monitoring the ESG and impact KPIs, and also to check on the implementation of the action plan. Also, I wanted to discuss about the key frameworks we use for the ESG analysis. So I've already mentioned IFC performance standard, but apart from that, we also rely on the ILO core standards, which are about the good labor practices and respecting human rights. Apart from that, we also rely on the client protection standards developed by SERIS and SPTF for fair treatment of clients. And other than that, we also work with, other than that, we also learn the UN Global Compact principles and the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises and the EU SFDR. So then to quickly summarize the key focus area for ESG analysis for us, as I mentioned earlier, impact and ESG eligibility criteria is important for all our investments. It's important for any investee to clear our impact and ESG criteria for the investment to be labeled as sustainable investment. Other than that, the key ESG parameters that we consider for FIs are exclusion screening, good labor practices, and client protection. So we encourage all our investees to align with ILO core standards, go beyond local labor regulations where possible, and also align with the client protection standards. We also support FIs in enhancing their ESG performance and support them in implementing the ESAP in any way possible. Then to quickly touch upon some of the challenges we encounter when working with MFIs or during the ESG analysis, these include limited awareness on the ESG requirements, such as sometimes the application of exclusion list screening mechanism, it's not conveyed properly to the staff. Another common issue is the data availability, which was also an issue which we saw in the poll. So MFIs most often do not have robust MIS to monitor ESG KPIs, such as maintaining gender disaggregated data for workforce or borrowers. And MFIs often lack internal capacity to implement ESG policies and provide regular training to staff. For example, we have come across cases where staff is not aware of a separate grievance mechanism for sexual harassment cases because of the lack of training. So to summarize, our ESG analysis framework mostly focuses on financial institutions aligning with best international ESG frameworks, such as EU SFDR, ILO core standards, IFCPS, and client protection standards, while also complying with the local ENS regulations. Okay, that's it. I'd be happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you.
The idea of the action plans, which basically allow MFIs to kind of phase in implementation and compliance with these standards. I think it's a very sensible approach, given, as you said, just quite limited awareness of MFIs of the standards. Meanwhile, we had questions to Jan, which he answered. CD is not present in Europe. It's very well known in the South. Unfortunately, does not provide funding in Europe and the former Soviet Union countries. Equity, I think, would be something really appealing. There is a clear shortage, and we have a lot of discussions about equity, and that's why CD's offer would be very, very tempting here in this region. We also have a question from Nicola, who said his mic was broken, so he posed his question, and it's a question to all investors present here. So I propose that we now move on with Edward's short presentation of Crédit Agricole, and then we answer Nicola's question. So Edward, please, the floor is yours.
I will be, thank you, Gregors. I will be quite quick because I see the time running. So I would like to present quickly the foundation and then give examples of how we can work with MFIs on ESG risks. Regarding the foundation, we were created 15 years ago by Grameen Trust and Crédit Agricole, and today we are an asset owner of about 100 million euro, providing debt and technical assistance to microfinance institutions in 30 countries, including countries in the region, in the ICA region. So our aim is not only to finance MFIs, but really to help them become stronger organizations. So the technical assistance component is very, very important for us. And so I would like just to give examples of how we can work together between investors and MFIs on ESG risks, and also leveraging on the presentation that was just done by Prajakta, which was very clear. Thank you for a good investor ESG framework. So regarding outside-in risks, so we have to, by regulation, and also because it's our mission, we have to protect the value of our investments and the value of our own balance sheets. So when we are facing an outside-in risk, so typically, for example, a climate risk, we have different ways to manage this risk as an investor. The first one is to decrease our exposure to the risk. So that means that we have country limits. We will not expose too much to the most exposed countries to climate risk. So the first strategy, it's not in priority order, but the first I'm mentioning is to decrease the risk. Another strategy is to mitigate the risk, for example, through guarantee mechanisms. But for most of our partners, what they see, of course, is the way we engage with them, and we build with them some technical assistance mission. And today, our focus is really to work on our partners to better assess climate risks, because quite often it's not something that is well known and well taken into account. So that based on this assessment, we can design together technical assistance programs to help them face these risks. We have started, especially in Kenya this year, but we will open that to other countries. And then, so that's about outside-in risks. About inside-out risks, which are the risks that are generated by our investees and their stakeholders. For me, the main risk that we have to work on is insufficient client protection in our sector. So we have been paying attention to that risk, and we have been engaging all our investees to join the client protection pathway promoted by Service plus SPTF, which means that in each contract that we sign with our investee, before they get a loan from us, they have to join this client protection pathway, which is an initiative that allows MFI to be transparent about their client protection practices, and also to commit to keep being transparent and to improve their practices. And as responsibility does, and our fellow lenders, of course, when we see an important gap in client protection, we will co-design with the investee an action plan, which can be sometimes just 1 or 2 actions that we will put into the loan agreement, so that we really work together on ESG risks.
Okay, super. And great to hear that you actually also offer technical assistance, so you do not leave MFIs alone in this ESG journey, ESG adoption journey, which also partly answers Nicolas' question about technical assistance to MFIs. Could others also maybe respond to this question? Do you provide any opportunities to MFIs to work to help them understand ESG standards? Do you provide TA on this topic to them? Let's maybe go one by one, maybe Prajakta.
So we do not provide technical assistance through all our products. We have some very specific products which provide technical assistance, but they are more on the climate finance side.
Okay.
For microfinance, we engage with our investees on an annual basis, and we provide them support and guidance if they need any to improve their services. But we are not directly providing technical assistance as of now.
Okay, super. And Karina?
Yes, we provide technical assistance, and it's really mainly dedicated to help to our investees to develop ESG or to improve the ESG performance, and to develop impact measurement systems. Besides to that, indeed, every year with the impact report that we require to our clients, to our investees, to report on the on their ESG data. Also, we support them to understand our ESG framework, and now also how to report in the digital platform. So we try to have this contact and this support and provide this support to our clients to understand the ESG framework.
And okay, Jon?
So absolutely, we can provide any types of technical assistance. Actually, we have our own capacity to. We can provide TA that we do ourselves. So we have internal capacity at CD level to do that, and we are tooled with the tool that we need to have the fund to subsidize that on our own. And for instance, just last week I was in Uganda and we organized a 3-day seminar with 23 microfinance institutions dedicated to this topic. What about the rise of ESG and how we integrate that? Because we noticed that there's a lot of confusion, and we really want to avoid that. There is either an extra layer of reporting that is added to what is already done, or that that practice of microfinance institution becomes CSR, and we start counting paper and immaterial matters for microfinance institutions, because we are not in the capacity to engage with our stakeholders and say that we should focus on what is material as microfinance institutions, meaning mostly, of course, client protection, but HR or management, and of course environmental negative externalities and climate change effects on the customer. So we cover all those topics depending on the needs that we can assess from our partners, depending on what they want to do. Mostly because we do not want to push things that our partners are not interested in. And for our debt fund, for instance, FEFISOL 2 has what the technical assistance is roughly 10% of the assets of FEFISOL 2. So it's quite important, and we can cover any types of needs. For FEFISOL 2, we even have a capacity to finance assets, which is very unique, I believe, thanks to blended mechanisms that we have put in place at the fund level.
Okay, so super. And you mentioned, did I understand well? So there is a certain risk. Imagine there is a risk also with implementing ESG standards as such. You said that for institutions, social environmental performance may become more of a CSR function rather than kind of a just DNA type of reality. Is this the risk?
I think there is a risk, in my opinion, that the new wording raises confusion. The new stakeholders engaging with microfinance institutions now that that this industry is connecting with the global financial market, where they have very limited expectations actually when it comes to SME. They're not engaged as we are, or they're not mission driven for the 99% of them, and probably more than that. And the way they will assess it is going to be unadapted to what microfinance institutions can do now. Sometimes the expectations are a bit strange, when it comes from, for instance, on assessing portfolio greenhouse gases emission. I mean, who does that actually? So why microfinance institutions should do this? I think it's a subject of discussion that we need to engage with. We need to engage with stakeholders and not take things, as accomplished, and organize ourselves so that to focus on material aspects, for instance, the effect of climate change. And this is very true, especially if you have agriculture portfolio. Climate change is very material, and the customer are facing the effect of climate change. And this will have an effect on the portfolio at risk. This is sure, and it's already the case in many countries. For instance, for investors invested into agriculture entity, the risk rose a lot last year. Of course, it's not only because of climate change; it's one of the reasons, but it's something that is already very present for everybody. So we are putting efforts. We should put efforts where it matters, and be able to remain institutional investors, that we are not investing into mining, that we're not investing into energy production and those kind of extremely intensive greenhouse gases industries.
Okay, super. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of it just when a good discussion could start. So I apologize for that. Maybe I didn't manage the time that well, but It was a fascinating session. Thank you so much for demonstrating how each of your institutions cares not only about ESG standards, but in general about how institutions you work with are socially and environmentally driven. I think we had a great proof of that. By the way, Jon, you had another plea to come to Moldova, so you should really reconsider your geographic positioning. I would like to ask our participants to evaluate our discussion and thank all of our speakers. Thank Prajakta, Karina, Jon, Edward for their time and for their insightful remarks today. Thank you so much, and please enjoy the rest of this conference. Thank you.